joining us to talk about the business of filmmaking in Nigeria, box office versus budget, is a filmmaker and a producer who's worked on projects like Bling Lagosians and most recently, The Artifact. Please join me welcoming Tolu Awobiyi, or should I call him Lord Tana? Good to have you on the show.
Hi Sam, how are you doing?
Fantastic. Good to have you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, let me start by asking, because I think everyone is curious, right? How do Nigerian filmmakers like yourself, typically fund these projects? Because looking at the list, I mean, some films, as much as 100 million naira goes into the budget. How do you fund these things?
So again, most filmmakers start out, as with friends and family, trying to, give me a 10 million here, give me a 5 million here, give me a 2 million there. And they basically build that profile as they make the films they make. I remember when I started out, I remember reaching out to a friend of mine and saying, I think I can make films. Can you give me 1.5 million to see if I can try this out? And then that grew from, 1.5 when I had this conversation to a 6 million naira production budget, which ended up somewhere around 11 million when we added marketing to it. And so in the end, what you find is that we start out as, friends and family, but then after some time, as you build your profile, you begin to have people come to you to say, I want to make a film, I want to make a film with you. Can you, show me how? And then sometimes you get investors who come to you. Initially, you go from your friends and family to individual people. Then sometimes you have a group of people who come together. And then after some time, you begin to, receive institutional funding, maybe like, Afri-Exim Bank of Industry.
Right.
Somewhere in there, that's how we find our funding.
I must confess, I see the different parts of it, from intimate family, to organizations. I'm curious though, because at some point you mentioned, someone giving you a 1 million here. We've seen films get bigger. What's the average, budget for a commercially viable Nollywood film? What would you say from your experiences, an average budget?
So I would say that it depends on what platform you're targeting. Now you find that, most, I'd say 80% of filmmakers in Nigeria have their films end up on YouTube. And so for an average YouTube film, you're doing somewhere between 2 to 10 million naira. I'd say that's somewhere where you're gonna find your average, maybe like 5 million, maybe 7 million. And and people are killing it, making a killing on YouTube, even though, again, we have to be careful in having everybody head off in that direction. There are formulas to making it work on YouTube. Now, when you talk cinema box office, you're looking at somewhere around 30 to 40 million. By the time you start to hit the 100 million, 150 million, or 200 million, you are looking at somewhere in the range of a film that must end up on platforms either Netflix or Amazon Prime to be able to break even.
I'm looking at, some statistics, all right? I was going to say thank God for AI, but also, of course, the information available. And we're seeing films like Battle on Booker Street, a budget of like 100 million. 2016, Wedding Party, a budget of apparently 60 million. And I'm looking at these numbers, and I know you started with YouTube, which is a big thing now. It seems cheaper to get a YouTube film done than cinema. Now, would you say that we're losing on the quality, when we say, okay, YouTube? What do you think?
I would say, it's about who you are targeting and what you're targeting. For a YouTube film, you find that you end up with maximum 1 or 2, 3 locations at the most in the whole story. And so, I wouldn't say a loss in quality, but I would say a loss in scale. Whenever we talk to the platforms guys and we want to sell to them, they keep saying, we love Nigerian stories, but we want to be able to take it to scale. Can we do big scenes in the market? Can we do big scenes in the streets? Can we do concerts? I'll give you an example. You see the film that came out over the weekend, A Lagos Love Story. When you see the quality of what is put together, it's about the scale of the film. But you can't do that on a YouTube film. So I wouldn't say quality. The storytelling is not, you don't get to do as much as you can on YouTube. But look at, for example, Omoni Oboli's film that's gone on to do over 22 million on YouTube. right? Now that's something that happens, once in a while. You see a spectacular story just go, catch fire online. But what makes sense is to always find a way to find the balance for the platform you're going to, because those things will determine whether you make a hit there or not.
I mean, now that we're breaking this down, and in my mind, I'm, listening, of course, not a filmmaker, but comparing and saying, if I'm going to put in less, and maybe I could be lucky, like, Love in Every Word, and, hit it big, or should I look for more money for this budget, and perhaps it's going to be bigger? Where are the guarantees? Does that come to mind as a filmmaker? Because you can't guarantee anything.
Yeah, it does. So you see, when I was still having a conversation just before this meeting, and I was telling the people who were listening that the way we do it in Nollywood is that we're budgeting from the moment we start to tell our stories, right? In other times, for example, in Hollywood, they will write a story and dream big and talk about flying to different countries and all of those things. But in Nollywood, we basically are budgeting as we're having our ideas. So we say, okay, I want to make a film that involves traveling to 3 states. Immediately, your budget has gone beyond a certain range. You're not doing a YouTube film, right? And so it really is about that kind of assessment. Whenever you talk about films that end up on the platforms, some level of skill has gone into it, some level of budget has gone into it, right? And you'll find that if you're going to cinema, there's also a certain budget range, because those environments would only give you a certain amount. So I would say, for example, anyone who wants to do a YouTube film, a safe budget will be somewhere around 5 million, right? With the hope that, if you make say $10,000 back over a period of maybe 1 or 2 years, you are able to, cover your investments with some profits on top of it.
I guess a big question now is, I know this might be hard to answer, but can a low budget film still achieve like high box office returns in Nigeria? Are there some examples you think, for a low budget film to still do incredibly?
I'll say to you, with film, no one knows. It's always like lightning in a box, right? In that you have this idea, right? And you say, this is what is going to work. You never quite know which one will do well. I'm going to use a personal example because I'm always, you have to be careful, politically correct, when you touch other people's products. I remember that there was this film we made back in 2020. It was called The Wait. Now, when we made that film, the idea was that we were going to make a film, with some known faces. We had Nse Ikpe-Etim, we had Deyemi Okolawon, we had Jimmy Odukoya, we had Inidima and Meg Otanwa on the film, who are like our big names. We had Kunle Remi somewhere in there. We had quite a healthy mix of actors in the film. Now, when we went to cinemas, if I recall correctly, we made less than 10 million, that's a natural disaster because we had spent somewhere around between 30 and 40 million. Now, the interesting thing is, over a period of about 6 to 8 years, 8 months, we started looking for a way to sell this to platform. Now, of course, when you go to cinemas and you make 10 million, you assume that maybe my film is a bad film, right? That's why people didn't go to watch it. No, you're not correct. We then go ahead and sell this film to Netflix, and the film goes on to be the 8th most watched film in Africa in 2023.
Wow.
So again, when we made the film, we're making a faith-based film. So we didn't have super expectations, but we wanted to make a good film. Now, because it was a faith-based film, we tried to sell it to a couple of platforms like airlines, and we got we kept getting rejected, maybe because it was a faith-based film, right? But when we then got onto platforms where people were able to sit down, they're able to sit in their living rooms, they can cry without, feeling like, why did I go to cinema to go and watch a movie that makes me cry? They can stop the film, pause, go, get some popcorn, they can come back, rewind, ask questions. What happened here? Why is this person doing this? They rewind and so, you see, each film will find its own home. I will use another example. I made a film called Ajuwaya in 2016, and we released it in cinemas, and it was really bad in cinemas. But the interesting thing was, eventually that film then got onto on streaming platforms, and it went on to my first film to go over 1 million was this film that I thought was a bad film because it didn't do well in cinemas. So it's about finding your, while you're trying to make your film, you start to begin to think, where is the audience I'm talking to? Now, Juwara, for example, was a film targeted at young people. Again, I will talk about the artifact from there because, again, when you have identified the audience, you must find where they most comfortably will watch their films, where they express themselves best.
Let me ask you
find that young people watch their films on their phones, right?
Sorry to cut you.
That's how to target into this thing.
Wow, sorry to cut you. I mean, thinking about this, all I can tell myself is, thank goodness for these platforms for marketing, which is something that a lot of films now put. In fact, I was reading that for Funke Akinyele's film, 30% was dedicated, according to marketing alone. How important is marketing, in pushing a film from, like you said, a film that people would call unsuccessful in cinemas to still making some money thanks to platforms, like Netflix?
Yeah, so it's critical. It's extremely critical that you plan for marketing. You have to have an idea where you are going, how you are going to find the, because again, we're still at that level where we're, we don't exactly have all the money all at once. So most times you find filmmakers have enough money just to make the film, production, then they start to plan for how they do their marketing. Now, in other times, when you are raising your budget, you raise the budget for the marketing, and I've heard that sometimes almost 50% is spent on marketing the film. And so it's critical that you don't just think about making a film, you also think about how you plan to sell the film. And you try to raise money also for the marketing of the film. Now, actually, for example, in some cases, you're planning to make a film straight to platform. And you're hoping that when you get on the platform itself will provide some marketing funds to drive your films. And you will see that will happen with certain films that have been commissioned, like Netflix originals or Amazon originals, that the platform then gets to also market the film on your behalf. And so that's the kind of thinking that we encourage.
Well, I mean, I wish we all had all the answers, but it seems like it's a gamble in some form. I mean, as long as you have a good story, a great cast, and you can market, maybe that's the success. I wish we had more time, but I want to say congrats, of course, on your latest film, The Artifact. And we're looking forward to seeing that one soar as well. I wish we had more time, but thank you again for spending time with us. Of course, filmmaker and producer, Lord Tana. Thank you again.